Welcome back to the Prop Talk, the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild. Here we are back on Zoom again. Just before we jump all the way in, I'm going to just throw out a little apology that the first one that we did, I was overmodulating a lot. Hopefully, I kind of toned it down. I feel like it sounded drunk the whole episode. I don't know if you guys heard it, but it was pretty funny. It was like Bill Maher on his podcast after he's done like 6 bongs or something. But anyway, so
I
hopefully
think you
it's
sounded
better.
fine. I think your mic was
I don't
a little
know,
too
man,
loud.
but I'm
That's about
glad. Yeah. But so anyway, today we're like across 3 time zones. Okay,
Yeah.
so Mikey is in Boston still, or Boston
Yep.
area.
Yep.
Okay, Tim Sheehan in the room is from in Florida. Good morning, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Excellent. And then Gary Greenham from the UK. Right? How's it going, pal?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
Excellent. So, I've been wanting to do this ever since I was gifted the opportunity to come on F1. So again, thank you for that, Gary, because that was an incredible experience. And it was an incredible experience because, obviously it was a giant movie, but working with you two guys was amazing. I mean, because we had a lot to do in a crazy town of Las Vegas in a short amount of time. And then just the general scope of all of F1 was insane. And I was really impressed by how well organized everything was. And then Timmy, I'm just amazed at what a great set person you are and how your brain works. And I just, again, I was only on it for 10 days, but which is nothing compared to the massive epic undertaking that was for you guys. But nonetheless, and you also have a great career, both of you guys, so I just want to jump in and talk about all of it. And I really enjoyed the last season of Gemstones too, that Tim did the set work on. It was fantastic. So we'll get into all that. But before we get all the way down, there's something, this is a perfect opportunity for me because here in the United States, the prop job is pretty cut and clear. There's the prop master's assistant prop master, and then there's prop assistants, and then in television there's set master, and then there's people off production. But in the UK, it's kind of confusing, or at least to me, it is. And I know a lot of people. So, Gary, I'm hoping you could help us out with all that, because what I have is there's supervising standby props, there's standby props, there's dressing props, then there's just simply props, and then there's charge hand standby props. So can you kind of break it all down for us a little bit and tell us how that whole system works?
Yeah, I think for us, the main system difference. When you understand the main system difference, it does become a little bit clearer. Even though the job titles doesn't make it sound so easy, but obviously I've worked in the US a couple of times now, so I've understood your system. And we've had a couple of guys who have come over from the States just to do a couple of weeks. So we've jumped into the American system. But the fundamental difference in America is we're a lot more involved in the set dressing. So we have what's like a prop master who is effectively in control of how we know it in the American system, the hand props and the action props on the floor. But we also deal with the set design and the set deck side of stuff as well. So whereas in America you have a lead man and set dressing team, which we all know is kind of very separate to us. It's almost
Right.
not many people, or nobody does, both of jobs. You either do one or the other. In the UK, it all comes under one umbrella. So even
Mm.
once that umbrella's in, it gets filtered out from the get go of obviously taking our team on. We're involved in that. So the easiest way to say it is you have a prop master who's looking after both departments. I'll call them separate departments because we both understand that. So you have the dressing side and the action prop side. Underneath that, you then have your supervisors or your charge hands who look after getting the set ready for us to shoot on. And then you have me, which is the supervising standby prop, who then controls the floor. So
I see.
it's like we're on a lot earlier in the process than you guys are probably used to. Like a prop master, we usually get. It depends on the size budget film that you're on, but for all intents and purposes, let's talk about the sort of 50 million plus budget films. A prop master will be on any time between 18 to 21 weeks before shoot.
Mm.
So it's a
Wow.
lot longer prep.
Yeah.
And then usually a standby, supervising standby would come on. It can be very different depending on the teams, but usually I usually get onto a film 10 to 8 weeks out. And then I will break down the script. So the early doors prop master's job is to obviously get the logistics, work out the budgets. Then he has to then start looking into set deck makes. So um, if I just take our last film, which was Masters of the Universe, there's obviously quite a lot of makes that have to be made on the set dressing side of stuff, which isn't really anything to do with a hand prop. Um,
Right.
like Skeletor's throne, for instance, that was a big make. It took 4, 5 of the prop modelers to make that, and that was made over a course of 15 to 16 weeks. So we're kind of two departments into one. I think that's the easiest way to explain it. And then on the
Right.
floor side, you have me who's supervising standby props, who you would sometimes call prop master or on the floor. And then we would have our standby props, which is what I would know that as assistant prop masters.
I see.
So,
And
so
then
do you guys, does the set deck department have like lead men's or anything like that, or is the
no,
prop master pretty much, but that just falls under the split of both set dressing and props?
yeah, there is no lead man on the floor. So my team, even though we're action props, the one role that we have in the UK, weirdly that comes under the art department and not set deck, is we have a standby art director. So
Mm.
he's kind of a bit of set dresser stroke art department because he's obviously floating walls. He's working the bits that art department will work with, but he's obviously also in charge of how the set looks. So we come to a template, and then the director wants to move chairs, wants to set a counter out in a different place. He's the guy that does that, but he's a team of one. So we would, if it's a small set with not a lot of dressing in, my guys would help him to move stuff around. But if we're going into a bigger set, we would obviously have a swing gang, which is kind of like the set dressers. So it's a slightly more dependent set by set as opposed to film by film. But yeah, he's a team of one, and then there's us, and then depending on the size of the crowd and the size of the set that we're on, depends on how big that gang is really. But I mean, a general rule is whoever dressed the set, which is what you would call set dressers, which we would call dressing props. Whoever
Hmm.
dressed
I
that
see.
set would usually stay, and then they would dress that set. So obviously, if it's a smaller set, you'd have a smaller amount of guys, and if it's a bigger set, you'd have a bigger set of guys.
Right. And how about the decorator? How does the decorator work with the prop master?
Yeah, so the set deck and prop master, they obviously have their vision for everything that's dressed into the set, and the prop master will kind of follow their rule. Obviously, if there's makes like the throne, for instance, or anything like that, that will go through concepts, which is usually through ourselves, but obviously guided through the set deck. So they do work in tandem together.
Hmm.
Um, you have some jobs where the set deck will get onto the job and recommend the prop master that they want to work with.
Right.
Sometimes we would come in via a producer route anyway, and it'd be totally separate. But they would meet and obviously go through, and then it's quite collaborative. It is slightly a different system.
I see. And do you have a master that you work with most of the time, or do you
Yes,
jump
I
around?
do. Yeah, Steve Morris is who I work with. So Steve Morris is the prop master for Formula One. He's the one
Right.
that got us the gig in the first place. Um, I've been very lucky. I've worked with lots of different prop masters, but me and Steve worked together. I think first thing we did, we was just talking about this the other day. The first film we worked with each other was Exodus, which was probably 13, 14 years ago. He was
Wow.
an assistant prop master then. And
Hmm.
assistant prop master is another role that's very different. The assistant
Wow.
prop master in the UK, he's the guy who basically gets the team together. So
I
while the
see.
prop master is off doing the concepts and working out the budgets, he's the guy that will employ us all. So he was assistant prop master back then. And we worked out the other day that since 13 years ago, every job he's done as assistant prop master and then now prop master, we've actually done every job together. So
Wow.
basically, the last 13 years, I've solidly worked with Steve. Um, he obviously did Barbie, which we when we walked through
Yep.
the prop store, we see his name up on Barbie with Angela's, um, which is nice to see all the way over in LA.
Yes.
And yeah, we've worked together, you know, basically since then. I've worked for other prop masters in between Steve's jobs, but it's been very busy the last sort of 5 years. So we've kind of gone job to job really with each other.
So, like on a movie like F1, was he on set at all, or
No.
much?
Steve kind of lets the floor. He leaves me to run the floor. He will obviously see us into every set. He will see us into everything. So if I need anything, kind of like with you, Chris, how we kind of works when we was in Vegas, is
Hmm.
I'm on the floor, you're off the floor.
Right.
Anything we need, we're giving you a call.
Right.
As soon as I make that call, I know it's going to be sorted. I can put the phone down and then just wait for your call back or you to turn up to set and help us out as we need fit.
Right.
But yeah, the prop master's role in the UK is most of his work is done off the floor. Um,
Right.
any prop show and tells that we have, Steve likes to be involved, so Steve will come down and he'll do those prop show and tells. Obviously, if it's a very busy job, he's quite happy to let me do that. But he likes to build a rapport with the director and make sure everything's in coherence with the set deck and the vision that everybody wants.
Right. And so I guess that's part of the reason why you just go from show to show to show, because like while you're shooting, he's got teams prepping the next show.
Yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, he's obviously on till the show's finished, and then we usually wrap out. But yeah, there'll be chats and there'll be meetings before we finish jobs, looking to do other jobs. But I honestly think the last just since COVID, um, before that, if I had 2, 3 months off between jobs, that was a fairly standard normal thing. After COVID, we were already on a job. We were filming Fantastic Beasts 3, which
Mm.
obviously got halted. So by the time that finished, it was another 6 months after COVID had finished. And then after COVID had gone, the studios were ballooned out. So since then, we've kind of, apart from the strikes, um, we've been job to job to job to job. But that isn't a usual thing.
Right.
We usually like to have time off.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
We all
Um,
we all have that freelance fear. I think it's part of our makeup.
100%.
We always say we're going to have a lot of time off, and then we get that phone call, and it's
Off
okay.
to the races.
It's
Wow.
hard
So,
to charge the batteries when that happens.
yeah, I
Yeah,
know, right? And that, yeah, I was
it's
wondering that because I mean, how long you were on F1 for how long? 2.5? What was it? How many years?
2 years from the time I got on. Steve came on, I think, 12 weeks before me. So Steve was on it for probably Steve. We had another job that was already lined up when the job had finished. So we had Project Hail Mary, which is the Ryan Gosling film
Right.
with Phil and Chris, which is due to come out next year. So we had that project in. So once we finished Daytona, which is when I first met Tim, that was meant to be the finish of the film. So
Wow.
he already sort of signed up. And then as we got to the end of Daytona, they'd rewritten the script slightly. And obviously, we'd missed some of the races. So we always knew we had to go back and film the races that we missed through the strikes, which was a few. But then writers got busy whilst we were away and sort of rewrit the script. And
Wow.
uh,
Wow.
you know, 2 weeks in Daytona ended up being 6 weeks for me. And then obviously
Wow.
Vegas was only meant to be Vegas. We were meant to go to Mexico for the Baja race,
Right.
and then where everything they just then tied it all into one. So we ended up shooting the Vegas and the Pismo all together in one swoop.
Right.
It became a longer film for me as well because obviously I was involved with Brad when he was testing the cars. So when Brad and Damson were getting used to the cars, obviously we could take control of all the safety equipment, the crash helmets,
Right.
devices, which I'm sure we'll speak about later. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that put me 10 weeks early into prep with him. But then when we kept stop starting, he obviously needed to get back into a car to get used to it because he was actually, as you probably know, driving at very fast speeds around the tracks. So
Yeah.
that took a lot of practice to get ready. So, it made my job a lot bigger than when we first took the production on, the project on, that we didn't think it'd be as big as it turned out. So it was not meant to be 2 years, but yeah, we was on it for 2 years.
Wow. That's amazing. And so you had to do a lot of, did you have a consultant from the beginning about like all the gear that you're going to need? I mean, I was impressed by that pit crew that was in Vegas. I mean, were those same guys followed you everywhere, right? That's the same.
Yeah. So there was a couple of changes around in teams. We had a team to begin with who was a Formula Two team that
Mm,
came on originally. Um, they came into Silverstone. So in that 10 weeks prep that we had, Brad obviously wasn't driving every day. We were learning from the pit crews, and I was learning all the safety because this was a very new world to me. And we've all done helmets and we've all done um, safety gear before, but I don't know about you, but I've never actually used it where it's actually being
right.
by an actor to keep him safe. So
Right.
there was a lot of learning on that side, but we were really lucky that we had a Formula Two team. So they basically took me through. So whilst we were testing the cars, we tested for 3 or 4 weeks the cars themselves before we tested with the actors. And whilst we were in that, we were doing pit stops. We were learning. There was obviously some fresh guys there. They had some stunt guys there. So obviously when the car's coming in at 180 mile an hour, well, it wasn't in the pit, but into the pit, down to 50. There's a lot of guys that had to be there that weren't actually the pit crew because we had obviously a designated pit crew to do the pit stops. But we had a lot of extras that had to play that role. So there was a lot of stunt people that had to learn it too. So we was kind of firing through pit stops and learning all that process. So I'm a big Formula One fan. So for me, well, as soon as I heard it was around, I was like, we've got to do it. And then
Yeah.
we were lucky enough to get the phone call, and Steve rang me and he was like, "What do you think?" And I was like, "When do we start?" I was like,
Yeah. Right.
"Let's just do it." So um, I have to say, out of all the jobs I've done over the last sort of 20 years, I think it's probably the most intense, hard, rewarding job that I've ever done. I don't think there'll be another job like that again.
Yeah.
Definitely not one round the corner.
So what the thing that made it hard, was it mostly the logistics of everything?
Yeah, logistics, the fact that, like I just said, the safety element, every time
Right.
you put in a crash helmet on, we were really lucky that obviously we got to meet Robbie of your team when we
Yes,
came out to
Robbie Duncan.
Vegas.
Yep.
So Robbie had obviously worked on Maverick with
Right.
Peck. So early on in the prep, we obviously visors are very reflective. But they
Mm,
have to serve two purposes. They have to serve the fact that the driver needs to be able to see. He also needs to not get reflective light from the sunlight itself. And then for us visually to film on, a reflective screen doesn't really work because then they can't see the actors. So it was
right.
a process where we had to work out. So we quite early on got in contact with Peck, and Peck taught us the system that he was using to sort of make the visors anti-reflective. The one thing that was a struggle to begin with is to try and find that balance of being able to make it shoot through, but obviously once you start peeling away reflective gear and it has a double skin visor, as soon as you peel that away, you're running into fog. So
Right.
it was kind of again a double-edged sword of trying to work out. So there was a lot of to and fro in, and then logistically, as you well know, and Tim well knows, once those races start, you know, um, I think I take it for granted, but I think a few of us do. We take it for granted that usually when we turn up in town, we're the show. You know,
Right.
we're the one that everyone's there for, and everyone's catering to us. When you walk into a Formula One world,
Yeah.
we're in somebody else's show, and
Yeah.
we've got to fit into their show, into their times. And the one thing when they pitched this film to Stefano and all the Formula One guys was, we're happy for you to do this, but you cannot,
Mm,
this cannot affect what we do. And obviously there was a lot of work going into that before we even turned up. So
I'm sure.
we had to learn a new way of working around another team, which we don't usually have. We usually have access all areas. We
Right.
usually
Yeah.
know everything that's going on, um, and trying to get that done, whilst also trying to get your gear inside on a morning of an event where there's
Right.
400,000 people coming over a weekend that it's not there to see you,
Right.
and try and get all your gear in and get your gear out. So uh, even if you only shot for 14 hours to get all your gear in and get all your gear out, you're looking at sometimes like a 16, 17-hour day, and that's not even
Yeah.
including your travel in and out. So
Like our last day in Vegas.
yeah, our 22-hour day.
I mean, again, for me, it was such a small sliver of what you were doing month to month for 2 years, and it was like that was so exhausting that that we shot that whole week in all those locations, and then and then the word was, oh, on Friday morning after we wrap, after shooting all night, we're gonna have to put everything in their cases and get it on a boat to Dubai like before you wrap. That was something. And I've never seen so many cases in my life. I mean, you had how many cameras on that show? There was probably like 10 cameras on that show, right?
Yeah, I mean there was 15 cameras, uh, different positions on the car. So even when the cars are going around, there was usually four cameras on a car. Sometimes we had four cameras going round, and then we had another team of three or four cameras filming. So at one time you could be in many places, and um, I just have to say, I know I'm going off on a slight tangent, but I would have not been able to do Vegas or Daytona if I hadn't have had you, Chris, and you, Tim. Like
Oh, well,
we were
thank
we
you.
were so lucky. you know, that for us, you know, when we're making phone calls across the pond and we're you know, getting people into a team of something that where it's, you know, flowed, and we've learned the system over, you know, 2 years and got to a point that, you know, it's so defined that the other shooting team, everyone's on the same wavelength. So to be able to drop, you know, people in for, like, especially yourself, Chris, a 10-day shoot with probably logistically one of our hardest tracks, Vegas. Just the
Right.
fact we had to move from up to California down in one truck, you know, to be able to do all that and then have a team of guys that had no prep to jump on that. I was very lucky to have been able to get people of um, your experience and your knowledge, because I certainly wouldn't have been able to do that with, you know, even if I'd have brought a UK crew, we wouldn't
Right.
have been able to do it. People that had already been on it, because we don't know the system, you know, how it works in America. So I wouldn't have been able to do it without you guys. And I was really lucky that Tim,
Yeah.
who I met on Zoom, and then Tim was obviously going to jump on with another guy, and then that other guy decided he wanted to go do another project. And I had been sending stuff to Tim's house to Daytona because we had no store over there. We had nothing. So I'd been sending trophies, umbrellas, everything was going to Tim's house. So then when obviously the teams changed, I was like, I need Tim. Tim needs to be on this. Tim's been on the phone to me doing work, you know, that was, you know,
Right.
not even on the payroll, you know, sending something to someone's house isn't a usual thing when you haven't even met that person. So I was really lucky, and I do think, you know, you do make your own luck in this industry, but you have to surround yourself by geniuses, and I certainly was with you guys. I just want to say that early on.
Yeah, well, we were very lucky, at least in Vegas, to have both of you guys, and then Robbie Duncan coming on at the last minute that was a coup, and that was great. And so Tim, you came on early on, right, to do Daytona. Was that pretty early in the show?
They called me in November to shoot for January. I got a call from Tim Mullen, who's an art director in LA. I had done commercials with him, and he's like, "Hey, do you live in Florida?" Yes, I still do. Because I'm a 44 guy out of LA, so I kind of do the bi-coastal thing for family reasons.
Right.
But he called me and said, "Hey, in a couple of months," and I was like, "In Daytona that weekend, it's got to be the Rolex 24-hour endurance race." And he said, "Yeah, how did you know?" I was like, "I go to that race every year. I have season tickets." He said, "Oh, okay." He's like, "Well, I want to put you in touch with, Gary and Steven across the pond, and you guys can have a Zoom and figure out where we go from there." And then obviously Gary explained they started sending stuff because there was no spot at the Daytona Speedway to send that
Right.
stuff. I mean, they were flying by the seat of their pants. They're like, "Oh, we'll put up a catering tent. We'll just drop the stuff there." And like, it's January in Daytona. It rains a lot usually for that race. It's 30 degrees, and there was no place to
Right.
send it. So I said, "Start sending it to me." And I ended up having to took up our whole closet. And it was fun because it was all the Rolex endurance racing trophies, first, second, third, best in show,
Nice.
best in class. That's boxes and boxes of stuff. So I'm glad that it worked out. And then I tried to find some other place. I actually called Parker, good buddy Parker, and said, "Hey,
Parker Swanson.
Parker
Yep.
Swanson, I want to bring Parker in to do it." But then they had already found someone else to do the Daytona portion. So that when we finished Daytona, Gary's like, "What are you doing in 6 months?" I'm like, "Well, I'm off to my show in a couple of weeks, and then I'll be finished in 6 months." He's like, "Well, keep open around Thanksgiving because I think we're going to be doing some Pismo and Daytona, some other stuff." So I called Parker again, and he said, "I can't do it, but call Chris Call." And I was like, "That's great." And I remember your name. We talked about it a little bit. You and I had worked together on Alias. I as an additional on-set dresser and as a set dresser,
Right.
20 some years. But I'd heard the
Many
name
moons ago. Yeah.
many, many moons ago. And
You did House
Parker,
of Lies with Parker, right?
I did,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, Parker and I were each other's first calls when we can't do shows.
Well, it worked out great because, getting the call
Yeah.
to meet Gary, and we hit it off like brothers from other mothers across the pond immediately. And
Yeah.
then to get you in the mix, and then you to bring Drew Knapp and get Robbie to come on, and just
Yeah.
It felt really good. I've been in the business 25 years, and we had an A team across the board, and it was really
Yeah,
a
it
lot
was
of fun.
amazing how well we gelled for sure. And you two guys have a great rapport on set. I was really impressed by that as well. And again, Tim, and not to, you know, toot your horn, but I mean, you have such a really good um way of pivoting, because things happen all the time, and we were getting curveballs thrown at us, again with that nightclub,
Oh,
which I understand, like 15 seconds of airtime, or no, what was it, like a minute and a half or something like that?
yeah.
And I barely
Yeah.
saw any Heineken in that thing.
Oh my God, we had what, 40 cases of Heineken. Yeah, that was fun. But yeah, so again, both of you have such great attitudes, and that makes all the difference in the world. So, when the chips are down, it's how people react. And you guys were like steady and great. And so I appreciated that a lot. Um,
Chris, the same could be said for you because we turn up to that bar and we'd spoken about it. You was obviously we were filming in Pismo when you went and did the recce, and you were like, right, okay, so we've got four staff that are going to be serving all the Heineken. We've got 2,000 people coming into that club, and then we've
mhm.
got another load coming in after you. Like they're going to do the drinks. I'm not 100% certain about this. And we asked the question, and then we turned up, and 1 hour before all the crew started coming in and the car started coming in, we're like, yeah, no, they're not coming in. They worked last night. They're not going to be here.
Right,
And I remember just thinking, how are we going to do this? And I just
right.
looked at you, and you was like, right, I'll be your barman. And you were like
Yeah.
straight in there. We,
And
dark and stormies. You were making dark and stormies. You had the drinks on the go. Every time I turn around, there's just you like with the bottles. It's
yeah, it
like
was fun. Yeah, and then of course, who was it? Somebody, was it Drew that commandeered one of the extras? He's like, "Yeah, I'm a bartender." He's like, "Well, now you are. Okay, you're working with me." Yeah, we it was pretty amazing night for sure. We got all those drinks all night long. It was pretty fun.
I have a
We were
question about
benefited.
I have a question about this movie because
Yes.
so you guys were all following around real at like the actual F1 races that as they were actually happening, right? As you were mentioning, that seems for such a budget like this, I could see like stuff like this happening on a lower budget because it's extremely guerrilla style. So I'm trying to figure out just what was the approach going into these? Like, how much real stuff did you use? And you have teams that you're just kind of like feeding off, and how much, like, how do you find that line of what you bring in and what you're kind of stealing from the real stuff? Like, because you're shooting real crowds at this point too, I'm assuming, or like, I'm trying to figure out prop wise the differentiate because it's you don't see this guerrilla style of shooting and stealing real stuff from this type of budget show, you know?
yeah. I mean, when we're talking about logistics, this is one of the hardest parts to fix. So if you imagine go back to June 2023, so obviously we've been on the film for a while since then, but Silverstone was well, the way that it had to be structured and the way it was filmed is we had only done two pre-shoot days before Silverstone, so we were jumping literally, you know, from the frying pan into rocket fuel. It wasn't even into the fire. And this was also a test for the film itself because Formula One were like, let's see how this goes. So we got to practice a lot. We did. We had our two cars at the back of the grid. So up until that point, everything we'd worked for the 10 weeks. The cars with the we had normal Formula Two cars and Formula Three cars that the guys had to work up. We only had the Formula Two cars, which were Mechachrome engines, which are real Formula Two engines. We only had them for probably 2 weeks before Silverstone.
Wow.
So we had to put them on the back of the grid. We all knew we were doing this, and we were going. It's the first time this has ever been done to put two cars into a real race situation the real cars came. We put our cars at the back, so we became 21 and 22 effectively on the grid. They went out for their hot lap, and then we followed on behind for half a lap, and then the cars veered off. So at that point, we went from having all real extras. So we had, I think, probably 200 of our own guys dressed already. So we have to be really careful with that because there can't be safety, there can't be marshals. You know,
Right.
they can't look like anybody that if something real goes down, you can't have someone running up to a fire marshal who's an extra. So for that part of the race, we had to not have any safety people. And then we shot for 2 days of the real race and the practice the day before. And then the whole of that crowd that was for free, basically, for us as prop guys, disappear. So now we had to fill in the gaps.
Right.
Now we're trying to match something that we didn't even know we would see until 2 days before. And then we had to
Wow.
match it. So I went and did a recce in Barcelona, and I worked out how the races went and who stood where pit marshals went, even things like helmets. You know, you go to different tracks, everyone should have a helmet, but in different circuits, they wear different helmets, and some of them don't wear helmets. And we were trying to make it as authentic as possible. So we
Right.
were really trying to work out, well, the Italians, they don't, they have, you know, the white hats on. Then you get out to Monza and they've got their hats, but they never wear them. So then we didn't wear them for Monza. So we had to obviously shoot those 2 days, look at the footage, and then try and build, you know, back in where we were missing links. I mean, obviously, the way we shot it was, you know, we did all our wides, so then we come in tight and we're looking at different
Right.
angles, but you don't know what you're shooting until you've really shot it. So if you've got
Yeah.
a guy we can pass with a tire rack from the Ferrari team, we've got to then try and work out where he was and then have him walk through. So we had spoken to all the teams before. They were really, everyone was so excited about it. So Ferrari sent us all of their race belts, all of their helmets. Williams gave us all of their pit crew because they were right next to us. So they gave us on their Wendy house, they gave us all the real headphones. So we kind of roughly knew who was next to us in the garages. So we had to, you know, work it back from there. But like you say, guerrilla style on a small film, you feel like you can do it on a scale this big with that many cameras on IMAX. You know, you're taking in a bigger chunk of background. I think that is one of the hardest bits. Is you're trying to look after your key main actors, but you were
Right.
the only one who was in that situation at that point. So you're the only one that knows that information.
Yeah. Also, if
So
you're trying to if you shoot the stuff on the day and you're trying to match it again with your own people a couple of days later, I mean, it sounds like a constant, like you constantly are shopping these within 3 days to try. Oh, we need to get that thing, that thing, that thing for 2 days from now to try to match.
yeah.
That's crazy.
And that's where I was really lucky that, you know, Daytona, I'd kind of got into a Formula One rhythm of understanding roughly the races because I'd been to two or three before I met Tim. So I started to feel confident in if I had this array of stuff, then I could make it work. Cut to go to Daytona, and it is a completely different race, a completely different environment, a completely different atmosphere. And that's where I was so lucky I had Tim because I was like, oh, so, you know, Tim, so are we going to need iPads and stuff for the pit crews? And he was like, iPads? He was like, they're going to have a pen and paper in their back pocket. You know, Tim had been to the races. You know, we lucked out in so many bits, you know. Um, but Tim will tell you the Daytona bit. You know, we had to do a shot where he walks through, which is the beginning of the film. You know, it's really important at the beginning of the film. If you don't capture audience in scenes 1 to 10, you know, people aren't going to buy
Yeah.
into the film. And you know, coming into Daytona was right at the end of the strikes, so we kind of went into that full steam ahead, you know. And I came out. How long did I come out for, Tim, before we started shooting? Was it a week? Was it
Yeah, it
2 weeks?
was a few days. I mean, it was less than a week in
Yeah,
working
it was
days.
less than a week. So I got out there, and then I think we had like 3 days where we were working through what needed to be done. And this big long walk, you see everyone, and we, because we had to, they had to interact with Brad. These are our guys, but we had to make it as authentic as possible. But we were really lucky. We had a team called Riot Motorsports with us. They were so helpful. They gave us everything we needed, didn't they, Tim?
Yeah, they're great.
And they were out of Daytona?
They're out of Ohio, actually.
Oh,
Wright
yeah.
Motorsports has won a bunch of races, and their sponsor, their lead driver, Adam Adelson, is of the Adelson family. They own a few casinos. They actually just purchased Wright Motorsports. The Adelson family did, so now he's in charge. Gary
Wow.
Wright's still going to run it and do that whole type of thing, but it's a great program there.
Right.
I would comment about Daytona and trying to get everyone doing the walk in. It's like there is no pause, there is no stop. We don't have cinematic immunity. We're trying to get stuff done. It's like we're in a live pit lane, and in Daytona the race is 24 hours and they don't stop for anything. So if you're not paying attention and you turn around, you're going to get run over. So trying to coordinate getting everything to the right place at the right time, knowing that if there is no straight line, it's a 2.5 mile oval. So if you need to get on the outside, you got to find a tunnel or somehow get it there, which is often going out of the racetrack and back around to get to the other side. So lots of moving parts.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of moving part type movie. Now, Gary, how many have you done a breakdown? How many continents, how many cities, how many countries, how many cities you shot in? It was a ton of them, right?
We started off, if you include the recce, we had Barcelona,
Uh-huh.
we had the Silverstone racetrack, then we went to Hungary, then we went to Monza.
Where's
Then
Monza?
Monza's in Italy, so
Okay, right.
that's like the home of Ferrari.
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of funny, actually, because you go to Monza, where every other track welcomes Formula One in. Monza's very different. They're the home of Ferrari. They're the home of racing. Formula One to them is another event. It's not the event. So again, you go there and Formula One's not the main show. It's Ferrari's the main show. So
Right.
like third tier. So we went there. Then we shot in Abu Dhabi.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to Daytona, come back from Daytona, and then obviously where we'd filmed in Monza and Hungary, but we did that without the actors because it was in the strike. So we managed to get some of the footage done that didn't include the actors. All the car racing. There's lots of times when we called them sprites, which I'm sure that's what you call them too, or NG cars, which could have been anyone. So we were doing moves of the Ferraris overtaking and Verstappen overtaking, which obviously isn't really Verstappen, and then VFX help out over the top of the cars. But when you watch the film, a lot of people were saying to me, "Oh, I like the way you cut it with real footage," but that was our footage. When you see the
Right.
races, they're our stunt teams doing the other spins and doing all the other driving. So we would go around and shoot that. So we went there, came back from Abu Dhabi, went straight to Daytona. Which should have been the end of the film, as far as working. Then we found out we're going back out to Abu Dhabi for a month. So we did that. Then we had to go back to Hungary, Monza again. And then obviously when I came over to America again to see you guys, that was kind of a whirlwind because we went to Palm Beach to do some practice of the cars, LA to
Right.
do some prep, which is where I met you. Then we went where Pismo, North
Pismo.
California. Where did we actually shoot that?
It was in Pismo. You shot
Yeah.
it right before we went to
Yeah.
Vegas.
So we went up to North California, and again, having Tim with me, showing me all the sights around. So we went up there, and then obviously a flying visit back into LA before we went to Vegas, straight out to Vegas, and then, like you say, our 22-hour pack down. I was filming the race in Vegas on the. So we stopped shooting on the qualifying night, didn't we? Saturday. I had Sunday watching the race with Tim, and then literally got on a plane, and then a day later, I'm picking up all the gear that we'd packed 3 days before, unpacking that, ready for 3 days' time to film another race. So we then filmed Abu Dhabi. So yeah, it was I haven't done a film that's had so many locations for so long.
Yeah, and again, we were really impressed with your system for moving everything. Those giant rolling cases that you had were like a godsend, right? I mean,
Yeah.
They're like roadie cases.
yeah, on
Moving
wheels,
a band.
and they stacked, and it was they were amazing.
Yeah, we kind of developed that system on this. I mean, we've always used those cases, but just not to that effect. And the reason that they became so effective is, um, I think at one point at Silverstone, I had to have two 18-ton trucks, and they're stacked together on top of each other. And if you include all the pit crews, so we had to shoot one day where we're shooting down the pit lane, so we see all of the pit crews. So on the real race day, it's the real guys, and then the second race day, when the races have gone home, we're doing that with actors. So we have to replicate that. So we've got 10 helmets for every pit crew. So you've got to work out just the pit crews alone. If you've got 10 teams, it's 100 helmets for background. They
Wow,
take up space, and you still have to make sure that that's a safety element. You can't drop one of those helmets and use it again.
right.
Drop one of those helmets, they've got to go to the side. So you have to have spares in case that actually happens. Luckily, I don't think we ever dropped one helmet. Um, don't know how on Vegas when we was running around with them on those carts.
That was nuts.
Yeah, I remember listening to your podcast, and I was really laughing at that moment when you and Robbie
Oh, but
were
your
talking.
carts.
You and Robbie were like, and we were like, yeah, we like to set up a set, and back in the UK, we do the same. We usually find our stage, put our tents up, get all our gear in, and we're parked, and we're not moving that stuff
Right.
until we need to. Formula One is like, I remember you guys look at me and Tim, and you're like, should we move all this? And we're like, no, just
No, just
like we're
throw it
gonna
on a
work out
Rubbermaid
this.
and roll.
We're gonna work out of this box. We're not gonna take it out of this box. We're gonna wheel this box. And I can remember looking at your faces like, this guy, he don't know what he's doing here. He doesn't
Where's
know
the
what he's
set cart
doing.
gonna go? Right.
And then I think after a day of shooting, you're like,
Yeah.
now I see why they're all in carts, why there's visors hanging, because
Right.
when that visor fogs up, you've got 10 seconds to get in there, take the helmet off the guy. You haven't got time to unpack it, take it out of its packaging,
Yeah.
take the clean film off. You're wasting 15, 20 seconds. And when you've got a hot lap, so as we haven't discussed yet, but I think one of the most craziest things about the Formula One film is on qualifying, you've got the real cars going round. They're not mucking around. They're there to win a race. They don't care about us in that moment. They're all smiles on the Thursday and the end of the race. But in the race time, it's like we're ghosts. And when that qualifying finishes, you have 10 minutes from
Right.
the minute that qualifying stops till you have the next qualifying. And they would give us a 5-minute hot lap. So if you think that the car's got to be ready, you have a 2.5-minute window.
Yep.
The driver can't get in that car until 30 seconds before, because he can't sit in a car for 2.5 minutes getting ready. He has to get in 30 seconds before. We have to wheel that car in to its position where we're going to launch the car from. So from the minute that queue finishes, we have 2.5 minutes to get a car from its standing still position onto the track, driver in the car. And even though sound isn't our department, we I don't know how we even got roped into it, but we ended up having to do all the microphone systems in the helmets. I think where we had such a transition of different people, we were the only ones that really knew how it works. So me and Tim were
Right.
really lucky that we met Chad in Daytona, who kind of done a good day's prep with us, and he showed us exactly how he was gluing the system in. So before that point, I was having quite a lot of issues with the microphones, and then Chad showed
Right.
me how he done it, and we learned the system. So we were gluing the microphone systems in, which are for sound. We
Wow.
almost became
Amazing.
part of the sound department, and I actually just worked with the sound guy Gareth, and he was like, I couldn't have done that film if it wasn't for you, because he was like, you were doing microphone systems. We were getting them in the car, but We had to get the microphone in. We had to make sure it's in the right place. We have to have his earphones in. You know, the balaclava's got to go on. The stuff's got to go on. Then he's got to put the helmet on. If he touches any of the visor with his fingers, you then leaving a fingerprint on. You know, it's like you've got 2.5 minutes, and
Yeah.
it's just us putting the helmet on. Everybody's only got 2.5 minutes. So you have like, I don't know, Tim, how many do you reckon crawled around that car before the car goes out in Vegas? 20 people around that
Yeah,
car?
you can't get to it. You're trying to get
Yeah.
something done. There's too many people in the way to get there, and what they're doing is more important than what you're trying to get done. And it's like it's on Brad's face. I got to fix the visor, and it's like you can't get to him to get it fixed. It's hard to do, but it's interesting. The point of the sound too, which is not just the sound for the film, but for the director, for Joe to be able to talk to him. So Gareth is recording the sound for the audio for the film, but all the stunt guys and drivers, and Joe is directing from command center where he's got to talk to these guys to go. You're doing 180, slow down, or and it's
Right.
both sound. So it was
This was
like
all through the Boleros.
yeah, through their comms, through their racing comms.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, all through the Bolero system. So if we don't get that right, you know, and even though it shouldn't really be our department, it was such a fluid film that became our thing. And once you've taken ownership of it, you know, it is your responsibility. If they can't hear each other, they go into a corner at 180 mile an hour, and the stunt coordinator's telling him to pull to the left, and he can't hear it. You know,
Yeah.
we kind of got into that system, but there's a lot riding on what you're doing inside that helmet. You know, he connects himself to a hands device, which is, if it, God forbid the worst happens, ever crash, it's stopping breaking their neck. You know, we're handing that over and the helmet over, and as much as Brad is a very, very good driver, um, he's still an actor. He's not a driver. You know, so you're kind of, you're looking into safety aspects as well. And there's obviously a lot of
Right.
other people there that aren't, that are post us looking up. You know, we're not the last safety guide, but in a two and a half
Sure.
minute, you don't want anyone to stop and say this hasn't been done.
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of pressure riding on that. So you're dealing with trying to make the film artistic from a props point of view.
Right.
It's also trying to think about a lot of other things that usually don't come into our realm.
No, I remember just working in the garage because I had to put all those stickers on the car. And oh, who was the head guy that was down there in the
Oh, Graham, the
Graham?
picture car guy, Graham. Yeah.
Yeah. He like read us the riot act, basically saying, listen, if you drop anything into this vehicle, anywhere in this vehicle, you have to let somebody know because it could be the matter of somebody getting killed or not. I was like, okay, I'm gonna make sure I collect every little piece of paper that I have, and
And
you
that
know.
was day 3 of prep.
Well, again, that's the thing about that film is that, we all know the expression hurry up and wait. Okay, where you're on the film and there's a lot of downtime and then you start filming. This show, there was no downtime. It was just balls to the wall the whole time. I mean, the pacing was fast and furious. I can't believe you did that for so many years, in so many countries. I mean, you must have just been in just had your head down and pushing forward. I mean, you can't like take it all in all at once, right? It's just like one day into the next. I mean,
Yeah.
what kind of crew did you have as far as like lead crew to be able to, set you up in whatever country and city you're going to next?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because we'd have a crew go over before us, but before you get to the racetrack, the Formula One, juggernaut is such a well-oiled, efficient machine because they
Right,
do it week in, week out. You know, they're going back to the same tracks that they're going to for the last 5 years. And just like Vegas, as you learned, their first Vegas, which is the one we were meant to go to, ended
right.
up having a lot of problems because,
Yeah,
the track wasn't right, the fire drain, they're learning on the job. But once they've done that once, they've learned it. So the problem is we, even when we were in Silverstone, we were there for 10 weeks of prepping, but Formula One doesn't move in until the Wednesday. So as
Right.
much as you're prepped,
Yeah.
it's like having a stage empty. It's like you're working in an empty stage, and then suddenly someone chucks the set down in a
Yeah.
day. So everything you think you are, everything where you think you've got space or where you think you might be
Yes.
able to work, suddenly disappears.
Yep.
So you can't really get a hold of anything, and each track is different. So it, you don't get any time to understand.
Right.
You can guess, and then you kind of have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C, and effectively we usually do plan D. I remember like Tim and me, we were on the floor at Daytona, and just the way that prop crew worked is kind of very different to how we worked in Vegas. Um, it was me and Tim basically, and we had a lot on our plates for two people. If you could do it again, you would have five of us down there, wouldn't you, Tim? You would have five of us in that vicinity. But here's the other caveat: is that the races will only give us a certain amount of badges to work because we're taking them badges away from their own people because you're only
Right.
allowed X amount of people in that track for safety reasons. So, the more, the production had to work out how many people in each team were really needed. So you would fight for extra people, but you were also sort of battling out with the fact that there just weren't more passes to get more people in. So me and Tim were running around, and me and Tim had only just really met 3 or 4 days before, and I'd say, Tim, I need you to go do this, and then Tim would be like, right, I'm going to go do this car and I'm working on this, and I'll be like, Tim, we need to go be down there. And he's like, and then there was one day he was like running, and I must have shouted about like 4 different jobs to be doing that were like all at other ends of the track, and Tim's just like, dude, I can't be in all those. It's just like we were just so busy, but we soon got our system. But you're learning your system on the go.
Yeah.
All our usual systems and usual protocols of here's our truck guy and he's our, it works for a little while, but then when it hits, you've just got to adapt. I mean, even in going back to the nightclub scene, all of a
Right.
sudden they're putting the drivers into the cars because we shot that nightclub scene on the day we were also shooting on the track, which was madness. In
Yes.
the end, I'm halfway through a scene with all the directors and Joe, and then it's like, right, we need the cars ready and we need this bit ready. But I was the only one who had actually sort of done that system out of all of us there. So it's like, there's no other person really to go and do this apart from me with the time that we had left. So I just had to literally at that moment say, Tim, the floor's yours. And that's where I was really lucky to have a team like you, because Tim's like, okay, Tim's like, take the floor, and off I go to do prep. When does
Yeah.
the lead man of your team go and prep while somebody else is,
Right.
but like we joked about, we had 4 prop masters on the set, so we were really lucky that we could do that. But
Yeah.
Tim,
That
Tim,
was a
Tim
push.
obviously was good friends with Toby Hefferman, our first. So I was like, I'm leaving, Tim's staying. It's like, cool, do what you need to do, because everyone knew that just everything had to adapt. So I'm ending up going down to a car, prepping a car, changing seats over, changing microphones over, because it was originally going to be a different driver in the car first, and then they swapped the drivers. So we had all the different stickers on the cars. It had to be a complete changeover. And then I got the picture of Tim behind the DJ
That
booth.
was a great photo.
It's one of
In
my
a sea
favorite
of
photos.
2,000 people.
Tim just leading
It's like he
the
got beamed down.
That was
yeah.
Tiesto in training, I guess. There it is.
That was pretty funny.
Well, I think
Um,
the other thing that's interesting is that, Gary's talking about these different sets. He's like, I got to run down. Well, it's a mile or a mile and a
yeah,
half. It's not next door or on the other
right.
side of the stage. He's got to go a mile and a half. And when I watched the film, Gary was training for the London Marathon while during this was happening. So all these racetracks all over the world the Brad running with the mixed match socks and training with all the team as they're running around, which is like an influential moment in the film. This was Gary, real life going on.
Right.
He was running all of these racetracks all over the world training, and I was able to watch him training. I just did 10 miles here and there. What an accomplishment. And I
Wow.
felt like I was really out of shape working with Gary because like I got to go to this spot, but he's running. We were running. It was great.
That's right.
There's no running for scale, but on F1 for Joe, it was running for scale. Yeah.
No, it was crazy. And I just in Vegas, I mean, the level of security everywhere to get anywhere, to get, you know, and for us, it changed over the 10 days we were there. And it's like, oh, in the beginning, it was like, oh, it's not that bad. They're closing a couple streets. And then every day it just got deeper and deeper. And, you know, places where I used to be able to get into the racetrack, I couldn't get in anymore. And, you know, I've never seen the level of security like there was on that film or with F1, not just the film, but with F1.
We
That
would
was
have that
nuts.
every day as well. You know, that's like when we're talking about the logistical nightmare, that they were the kind of things because we would all meet up in the morning, me, you, Drew, Robbie, and we'd be like, right, you're gonna go there, I'm gonna go there, Tim's gonna
Right.
go there, Robbie's gonna go there, and the plan works, and the plan is perfect. We're all very well executed our jobs. We've looked at our maps, we know our routes, then all it takes is one guy to go, you can't get through that tunnel now. And
Right.
now we're gonna swap the cars over. And all of a sudden, all four of us are in the wrong place.
Right.
And you can just all you can do is radio and just say, you know, we were making plans up, you know, which is why we're so lucky we had you there, Chris, because you were like, right, Robbie, you do this, you know, you go there, and then you know, me and Tim would flip flop between who was looking after who. You know, 1 minute Tim's with the director, and then I'm prepping, and then we would flip, and then Tim would be there, and then we were really lucky when they ended up shooting two bits at once. They would shoot in the cars whilst also shooting because we would get little snippets of the real Formula One people doing. You know, suddenly you would get Stefano, and he's ready to do his part. You know, you get a 3 minute phone call and you know, I don't even met Robbie the first day shoot because he didn't even get to do any of the prep, did he? With us, he had one,
No.
or me and Tim were off shooting, so I think you may have prepped with him for a day, but we hadn't met him. You know, we were 1 day in, and then all of a sudden we're doing a main unit shot with Joe Kaczynski, which again, what a stroke of genius it was bringing Robbie in because Robbie had just done Maverick with. So
Exactly.
it's like, right, Robbie, you're now running the show, and he's there. Me
Right.
and Tim are running up to the car, and we're prepping a car. You know, so now the two people who have been up front are now prepping, and the third guy, you can't, you don't usually do that in films, which we all know. We don't
Yeah.
we never work like that. And you know, on a film of that scale with that tight deadlines and timelines of filming you can't afford to be wrong because if you're wrong, you've lost a shot and everyone's looking at the prop department as you're the guy
Yeah. And
that
you can't
cost
get it
the job.
back.
And we would just flow, but we would sit there having our lunch, wouldn't we? And we'd be like, "Yep, everything's cool." And then we get back from lunch, and then it's like, "Yep, we're doing this part." And then all of a sudden it's like, right now we're flip flopping, and we were just lucky that we could all just go off and just take care of our each bit that we needed.
Right.
I'm so lucky I had the continuity of Tim as well, because Tim knew
Yeah, he
what
knew the drill.
he
It
knew the
helped.
drill. So whilst I was off maybe filming as well, and I was stuck doing a scene, he could be explaining to you guys how and then like you say, you ended up doing the stickers on the cars. Like it sounds easy a sticker on a car, but
That
it's
was
not
not
that
fun.
easy, and it's easy once you've done it and you understand it. But if you've never done it before, there's just a certain knack to sticking certain stickers in certain places, and
Well,
it's
yeah,
not. It's just you haven't got the time. You haven't got 20 minutes to get it right. You've got
right,
3 minutes.
right. And you
And,
can't
and
measure it because it's all curves.
Yeah, everything's curved. Everything's in its packet. We're on a limited amount of stickers as well. We had to work out when we needed to put them on and when we didn't because they were flip flopping the cars. Originally when we were going to Vegas, we had two 10-minute slots, and that was all we were doing. And then as Formula One starts getting used to having us there, they're willing to give us more time. And when we get that time, we have to take that time, because it's just, the production value is massive. So if we get another window to shoot something completely different that's not scripted, we would go and do it. Like you say earlier, it's the guerrilla style shooting of a smaller film on a massive scale.
Right.
Well, what's also interesting too for me was, getting into the system of like the least amount of people touching the car. Like in the US system, we don't do stickers. That's an art department person and that's a
Right.
standby. But in this world, it wasn't that case because it's the UK system and it's like the least amount of people that touch the cars, the better off. Gary's work and reputation had proceeded, and they're like, well, let's have him do it. He'll better know when and where to change the stickers than anyone else. And then it's like eliminate one other person from being close and in that world.
Did you have to
It was
change the
helpful.
stickers often?
Often, yeah.
Yeah.
Even in the UK, that's not usually our job. It's an art department.
Yeah.
It's not our job. But exactly how Tim just said it there is like, they're putting people into a position. The people who usually do that aren't on the set.
Right.
They don't understand, and it's not that not they just haven't been used to that kind of pressure that all of us have felt at some point in our career.
Yeah.
So it's like the people that were the kind of there to do it the first time around in Silverstone, they just didn't understand how the system works and how quickly, when they've got a 2-minute window. So it didn't go right, and in the end, it would be like, right, we'll do it because we're here. And then you do it, and then you kind of then, because if it's not right, it all goes wrong. And then it's
Right.
easier for us to take control of it because it's quicker and easier.
Right. And
It
and
makes
how
it really
many
work.
how many cars were there? There's like 6 cars, right?
Yeah, six cars at
Yes.
one time.
So that was the other challenge, is that you had to get the stickers exactly right on every single car, because and they often did switch cars in the middle of shooting. So if your stickers were off just a little bit, they were going to jump and move as you were filming. And I was like, when I was told that, I'm like, okay, this is a this is a lot bigger challenge to try to make sure that these stickers are exactly the same in every single spot. Because the two that were right next to Brad's head on either side of him, those were the ones that I was putting on. And again, to think that they were going to move in the shot because they were switching cars was unnerving at best.
Yeah, and they
But
would also change the cars. Those Mechachrome engines, they're real Formula 2 engines. We were filming with engines that, they're at the peak. That car can ping at any moment. So that car's going around, it's doing 180 miles an hour. All of a sudden, one of the gears go, it's like, shut down that car, get that car back in. Just like in a real race, when you watch a real
right,
race and the guy in 15th, they say pit, 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 race is over because the engine's going to go. So, we had six cars. So you could be all prepped to do your car. It starts up, it does one lap, and they're like, the car's wrong. We need to flip cars. And then you'd have to flip that car, and that car that you've just prepped for the next shot, you've put a different driver in with different sticker system. So
yep,
you'd have to then peel that all off and get that all in. And then that's whilst you're trying to also change the visor. And
right,
the visor change is, that like we said before, it's a big deal, especially in the night races, which you guys were there. It's not so hard in the daytime races, but once that temperature comes down, the fog in those, and you've got to make sure, not just aesthetically looking on the camera, mate. You need to give the guy a clear vision when he's driving at those speeds.
right. Um, I know we mentioned this before when we had Robbie on, but we talked about those Bolero systems. Those were great. I mean, and can you talk about that a little bit? Like, because those are game changer. I mean,
Yeah.
and have you used them in other productions?
Yeah, so I I
It's a
first came
walkie-talkie
around
system.
a system the same, which that is not called Bolero, but you know the grips and the camera. They have their earphone on, and they have their four-way speaking system. That's when I first understood what they were. Then when I did I can't remember what my first film was with them, but they were like handing them out to HODs. They were like, "Oh," I was like, "What's this?" So you know, it's a big block. I was like, "I've already got a radio." And they're like, "Yeah, but you can hear everybody else on there." I was like, "You can hear everybody on this radio?" They were like, "Yeah." I was like, "I definitely don't want that radio." Like, I do not want to hear anybody else apart from my team and the first. Like, I don't want to hear anybody else. So I kind of took it reluctantly. And then as soon as I took the system and you understand it, you know, so the easiest way to say it is you can build that system to have any channel you want with anybody from the production you want at any level of sound, and you can make your own groups. So effectively, the way most films run, and it is different from film to film. Channel one is what you would call the AD team. So they're on channel one. You have four channels at the top and two at the side. So you have six different people you can speak to at one time. Um, so, for instance, I have all my prop team on four. For instance, I have me and Tim on three. On two, I have whoever I need to speak to, whether it's director, and then on one you have like channel one, so you can still talk on channel one. And I remember when I was giving it to Tim, I was like, "Tim, take the system," and he was like, "Yeah, no, it's fine. We've got our system." I was like, "Yeah, but you can just hear everyone on their system." And he's like, "Oh, no, I'm not sure." And then as soon as you put it on, you're like, "Where's my Bolero?" And
Right.
especially in Formula One, because you're hearing so much information, and there's so many different people that you need to speak to at one point. You can speak to
Right.
anyone, you know. So someone can say on Channel One, I could be having a conversation with the first about what we need to do, and I can push Channel One and go, "Yep, copy that. Yep, we're all over that." And then I can literally press four, and Tim can be hearing that conversation. I'm like, Tim, run! You got to get there quickly." And he's like, "Yep, no, it's all good. We're fine. Yep, no, it's all good. Tim, where are you? Where are you?" You know, you can kind of have lots of different system talks, but it is an amazing system that's becoming a bit more regular now. I personally feel in 5 years' time, when it gets a bit cheaper for productions, but that's what we're all going to have. You know,
Right.
Formula One have
And
used it for years. We've used it for I've probably used it now for like the last 5 years. But
wow.
size of film will dictate
Sure.
whether you have them or not. I would say anything over a 30 million, 40 million budget, we usually have them. But like for instance, this film I'm on at the minute, we're filming Practical Magic 2. It's a more like our smaller scale films.
Right.
We don't have them there, but any big studio film now, it's kind of a given.
And do they also have sound feed in them?
Yeah, you have
Right.
the
So
live
you,
feed,
you
so
hear all the dialogue and everything.
yeah, you can hear the dialogue, which is obviously fantastic if you're trying to do any resets in the middle, or you've got to do any swap outs or text to switch in the film. You know, you get in the live dialogue, so you haven't got to have the cans on as well. Um, yeah, you can have a direct link to the directors. You can be hearing what the director and the DOP are talking between themselves. It really does give you a heads up, because people of our we I think what makes good standbys is the ability to read the danger before it happens.
Absolutely.
That's what makes
Anticipation.
good standbys. Is like, I can see this coming, or I can see that coming. So you can hear a conversation between a cameraman and the DOP, and he's like, "I can't shoot through there because he's walking through, or we need this, or we need that." And then
Right.
we could be having our own conversation without even talking to him. We can be like, we could put four guys over there with fire extinguishers, and we could have a guy. And then you can go on that channel and you're like, "Hey guys, look, we can offer up. We can have two pit wall marshals." Or they're like, "Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah, put them in." So it's easier than waiting for someone to say Gary on channel two, flick to
Exactly.
channel two, hear the information on channel two, go back to channel one, tell all of our guys to go to our prop channel, we'll go onto our prop channel. It's
Yeah.
too much
Yep.
time.
Yep.
I do feel it's the new future. I just obviously I think it's very expensive productions to run that. But I've had
Right.
jobs where they give it to my whole team, and I've had jobs where they only give it to me.
Right.
Formula One, we were very lucky that we were kind of all on the system, hearing each other at the same time and having a chat. So, also, the great thing about Formula One is because it's a prop, I had 20 of them.
Yeah.
Every other team might have 3. I had 20.
Exactly.
So I could choose who got them and who didn't. So
Yeah.
all of us guys made sure we all had one.
Yeah. They were beautiful for sure.
I thought it was interesting because they needed an RF team as well. So the production has to hire a team of people that program all the individual channels. And we had a little bit of problem with them in Vegas because the locations were a mile and a half apart, and there's city and buildings. So they had to move an antenna kind of in
I see.
between where we were and where the other team was. So there was a little bit of figuring all that out, that those guys were kind of chasing at the same time, trying to get it, because there were spots of the track where it was a dead zone. You couldn't hear anything.
Right.
It's
And
also difficult to hear a
Formula
radio
One,
when a race car is going by at 100 or
Yeah.
200 miles an hour.
Yeah,
You really
that's
can't hear too much either.
Yeah.
pretty intense for sure. Before we run out of time, I want to jump into Tim in the Gemstones.
Okay.
Love that show.
Yeah, I mean, come on. So, and again, for all intents and purposes, Tim, you're kind of the supervising standby props, right? That's kind of what assistant set prop master is, right?
Yes. Yeah, I'm the on-set master,
Yeah,
for the film and television, pretty much. I mean, we did Gemstones this past season with the HBO Time Warner merger, 20% less budget. Danny had to scale down the show, and then we had to shoot multiple episodes at the same time. A lot of the season, this past season, we shot 2 complete units at 2 different times and
Yeah.
50 miles apart from one another. So it was
In
quite a
North
change.
Carolina, right?
We filmed in Charleston, South Carolina, mostly, but we were kind of all over the place. We filmed plus or minus an hour or two from anywhere in there. We did some of the lake house stuff, was up at the lake in South Carolina, a couple hours from Charleston. But yeah, the Rough House guys all moved back there about 10 years ago. Danny and Jody Hill and David Gordon Green all went to North Carolina School for the Arts together. In Wilmington, North Carolina, they were in that first class of film students there, and then moved to LA, and then decided they wanted to go back to film in the Wilmington area, where they had filmed Eastbound and Down, and he
Right.
wanted to do Vice Principals, and Bill Murray and Danny got together, and Bill owns the minor league baseball team in Charleston, and he wanted him to be in Vice Principals, and Bill was like, "I'll do it, but I want to come to Charleston and do it. I don't want to do it in Wilmington." So then Danny went and visited them, and then they went and started filming Vice Principals in Charleston. They all loved it and fell in love with that place, and their families all moved there. Now I think there's probably 15 or 18 families from their group that all live in that area. And that's where we
Nice.
film Gemstones. And they film in the Carolinas a lot. David Green's been doing, we did the Halloween reboot with Blumhouse, which I did in 2018. We shot that in
Right.
Charleston. They've shot some of that stuff in Savannah, some of these other stuff, but they're headquartered there and film kind of all over.
And again, so you mentioned you're originally from LA. You have a boat in the marina, and
Yeah, I was born in Indiana. I went to high school in Connecticut, went to college at Rollins in Winter Park, Florida, and then moved to LA in '98 and got in the union in 2000, not knowing anyone. Went out there out of the blue and got in the union in 2000. I've been working out of LA ever since. Moved to Florida about 10 years ago for family reasons, and I still work out of LA.
I went to a Full Sail in Winter Park, Florida.
Oh wow, awesome! That's so fun. Perfect.
Yeah.
There it is.
My apartment was a mile away from where Rollins was, actually.
Oh, that's so funny. Yeah, a lot of people went to Full Sail. It's a great school. What did you study there?
yeah, apparently, right?
I just film. It was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah, it's very hands-on. I know a lot of people really like that program.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a lot of fill and crew, and actually actors and stuff come from Rollins too.
Oh, that's fun.
And so, how did you hook up with Gemstones? I mean, who was the prop master on that again?
Mick Flowers.
And you
Um,
worked with him a lot?
I have worked with him on and off. He and I met. We did The Revenant
Oh, wow.
of 10 years ago, back in 2014. His friend was the first AD for that film. Shot all in Canada. They were chasing snow. It also went into a long run where they hadn't finished the movie and the weather wasn't cooperating. So we got the call and went to Canada, and we're up there for several months filming the movie again, for some of the stuff that didn't work. And I met him, and then we finished up that in 2015, and then we did some commercials together and did a job with David Gordon Green for Sprite. And he said, "Hey, I'm rebooting with Jamie Lee Curtis Halloween. You want to come to Charleston and do this film?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds good. I like that." Plus, living on the the East Coast, it's only about 5 hours to Charleston. So I grew up going there when I was a kid to Charleston.
Right. Yeah, it's good time.
So it was a familiar area, and the food is great there. I like to eat, so it's a pretty spot to hang out. So I said, sure. And Danny had actually written the Halloween movie with David Gordon Green. So he was on set as a writer and not in it. And that's how we met. And then we ended up, finishing the film. And then a couple of months went by, and then Universal wanted a different ending. So they rewrote it, and we went back and did some reshoots of the ending of the 18 version of Halloween. And then right from there, Danny had written Gemstones and said, "Hey, you guys are still in town. Can we hop off and do this pilot for HBO?" And that's how I got in that group. And that was 2018, 2019. And I've been doing it ever since. So we did the pilot, and then a couple months later it was picked up, and then we went to series, and then, we went through the COVID thing and off for a year and then back to work there. And yeah, we just finished up season 4 last year. It's been a blast, and it's a great group of people to work for. Danny's super smart and just a great guy and family oriented. And
Nice.
as I said, I've been in 25 years, and I feel like I'm at home. He's just a great guy and great crew to be around. They have a no asshole policy, which I really appreciate.
That's
So if you
nice.
start to act like a jerk in anywhere on the call sheet or not on the call sheet, they show you the door quickly.
Which is pretty funny, since it's really the opposite of how the Gemstones were.
Yes, correct. Yeah, they represent that family, but it's like, hey, life is not imitating art there. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, and again, season 1 was amazing. Or wait, how many seasons were there? 3?
4.
4.
4, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Season 1 through 3 were great. And then 4 came along. Okay, and that first scene, or that first episode of season 4, was like completely different, and one of the most impressive recreations of civil war. It was a civil war, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that I've seen, and especially from a comedy. I mean, talk about that. Like, I mean, that was such a huge undertaking, right? I mean, when you read that, it was like, where is this coming from? I mean, it was phenomenal, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. When they send all the scripts ahead of time, we started to read through them, and I was like, this is episode 1. And then it was like, Gary talks about these prep lead times, these numbers I've never seen or heard of, these 21 weeks or 20 weeks. It's like I start Gemstones, and I'm lucky if I have 3 weeks of prep. The master gets an extra week or 10 days usually. So we're prepping 5 or 6 weeks, and it's like all of a sudden I'm reading this Civil War script. I'm like, this is in a month. Like, how are we going to put this together in a month? It's going to be impossible, because the builds and the design and the sheer volume of hundreds of background and all the firearms and all that, putting all that stuff in the choreography and the time it takes to put that together. We were all a little bit surprised. We were like, we're going to film this first. And then thankfully, due to some actor challenges, they actually ended up kicking it down the road a little bit. So we got a little bit more time. So we started in with some other stuff. But as I said, with the less budget from the show, we had to really cross-board a lot of episodes. But when we got to that one, we stuck to it and knocked it out of the park, I think. Everyone really brought their A game. Paul Daly's a great cinematographer, really put it together. And Danny had all of it. I mean, he's so bright, and the storyboards and descriptions and what he needs and what he doesn't need, he had it all put together. And really, we shot it all in this great old compound in Mount Pleasant in South Carolina. He did all the research. It's the piece of property we've ever filmed quite a bit there. I like it because it's the person that owns it. It's been in their family. The property deed was signed by the King of England.
Wow.
That's how long it's been in their family. I mean, they've had it hundreds of years in their family, and they really opened it to us and said, whatever you guys need. But to think that we're on the property where Civil War relics have been found, and during that period of time, and it's been in that family that whole prior to that, actually, which was kind of interesting.
That's amazing.
But, Bradley brought his A game. I thought that was interesting how, they were trying to cast and trying to figure out who that was going to be. And one of the guys in the office was with one of Danny's writing partners was like, I think we should ask him, ask Bradley. And, Bradley and Danny know one another and just sort of said, hey, let's figure this out. Danny reached out to Bradley and he said, yeah. And he sent in the script. And I think Danny said, like, within an hour, Bradley had read the script and said, I'm in, let's do this.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun to work with him.
Part,
Yeah, really
sure.
fun for him. He loved it and wanted to continue on. He's like, we got to do another season, or I want to make a Gemstones film that goes from Civil War to present day or something and develop more of this character, because it's like as sick and twisted as the show is.
Right.
All of a sudden you realize, like, whoa, here we are back a couple hundred years and here it is. And he just brought it.
Origin story. Yeah, no, it was incredible. You guys do some great props on that show. I mean, talk about the Bible.
Man, that's fun. That really gets into it. I know you guys talked about the foundations of building stuff yourself, or whether shops should build it. SAT has been great with us building whatever we could. The Bible, the production designer really got into these 3D printer things, and with the amount of time and stuff that we had to do, were really just different varieties. So those guys were able to control their 3D printers, and the art department had a whole printing room pretty much where they were able to print stuff. So
amazing.
Bible pages on the inside are period from the Civil War. The exterior is 3D printed with real amethysts on the outside in multiple varieties, because as you know, as the show goes through, it starts off then and goes forward a couple hundred years later to maybe some spoiler alerts here now, but it carries on through different variations. So we printed a handful of them and had to take them through their different levels. And it was one of those things. Bradley is a prop actor, and he wanted to carry that stuff with him and keep it with him all the time, which was great, which was a lot of fun.
That's cool. And how about those jetpacks? Did you guys build those?
Man, we tried to start off with that process, and it's one of those type of things, like, you try and do it, but the amount of time you have, you don't. Again, the art department really sat down. We wrangled them, put all the stuff together, changed out the straps and all that stuff back and forth, but Gary Naylor in the art department office really mastered that together by putting all that information in and programming it and creating CAD drawings of things that didn't exist, and then 3D printing them over months and then putting them together piece by piece by piece. And just the amount of work and time that it went into that. And they necessarily weren't the most comfortable things to wear, especially when they're hanging and having to wear their the seats and all the wiring as they're flying around the building. So there were some fun comments there. Edie Patterson, who plays Judy, just was like, this is not my favorite.
I'm sure. Well, it was great because they looked uncomfortable, but that was part of the funny of it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it works so well. There's so many scenes, the treehouse scene of them keep flying in there and bouncing around. Yeah,
so was that the treehouse was on ground level though, right?
No.
The interior?
No, it was
really
no. That was the discussion too. They're like, hey, are we going to do this treehouse for real? Or are we not going to do it? And they're like, well, let's do the exterior in this big tree on that farm from the King of England, where we shot the Civil War, up in this treehouse, which also serves as part of the compound for the Gemstones. And they were like, we're going to build one on stage. And they're like, we don't have the money or time to do that. Let's just build one. So they built that thing in that tree.
Wow.
Over a period of a couple of months, and it was stunning and spectacular. And the amount of work and the bracing, and the family was like all into it. They're like, leave it up. They're like,
I was about to ask that.
So when they were doing
due to HBO restrictions, they're like, no, everything has to be deassembled. They wanted they wanted nothing. I mean, even though they put it together and it was framed, and I spent some time doing that, but a lot of some of the filming in that episode was done by another crew, because we were on the other unit making another movie at that same time, pretty much in the same time. They had to take the whole thing down.
Oh, that's tragic.
But quite the treehouse.
Yeah. So are you local 491 also, or
No, I'm local 44. Yeah, I joined in 2000, and I moved to Florida 10 years ago or 11 years ago, prior to them getting rid of the home away plan. So I work in LA, and if I get a job, I go to LA and work in LA, or I go to LA and fly on production.
So all these jobs you've been able to get as distant hires then?
Correct. Yeah, I've never worked. First time I ever worked in Florida was on Daytona for this Formula One thing, a year and a half ago. And all the work I've done for the last 7 or 8 years has all been out of LA and on a distant hire rate from from an LA hire.
So a lot of times these prop masters are local to the area then, and you've been working under them. Is that true, or is like on Gemstones, isn't that prop master local, or is he's local 44 as well?
He's a local 44 as
Oh
well.
wow.
Yeah, Mick and I've worked together. Mick worked with them, has worked with David Gordon Green before, Mick Flowers, and he and I've
Cool.
had a great relationship over those years. And when HBO was like, well, we're filming in South Carolina and we want these incentives and we want to do that, they were a little upset, I think, because they don't want to bring us on a TV show away
Yeah.
from LA for 7 months and then pay us 7 days a week, with our per diem and our housing and everything
Yeah.
else that
Right.
goes along with it. But Danny stuck up for us and said, "These are my guys. These are the guys that are going to do my
Oh hell
shows.
yeah.
So that's your choice."
Nice.
So there was no other option. I know there was some grumblings at the beginning, but he really stuck up for us and said, "If I'm going to create my show, these are the guys that are going to do it."
Oh
So
Brilliant.
cool.
we hire a lot of locals.
Of
So
course.
yeah, it's like Mick and myself are 44, and Melissa Wooten's worked with us for all these years. She's from Charlotte. She prop masters all over the Carolinas, and we've worked together from the very beginning of that show. But he and I were the only two 44 guys in the prop department. Everyone else was a local 491 hire. We had people from Savannah and Atlanta and North Carolina and South Carolina, kind of all over the place. And
Oh cool.
our camera crews from New York, a lot of them. So it's a matter of like whoever brought what they could, and then you hire locals in that
Right.
area to make that
Right.
work. I don't know how that all works with the incentives, but
Totally.
I try and figure it out.
Huh.
Nice. So, completely off topic. What's your sake of the week, Tim?
Oh, I haven't had one this week. I'm behind schedule. It is Sunday. I had some
You're
good.
like you're in a sake club or something, right? You get
I
sake
I
delivered.
get some sake come from Sakaya in New York City in the
Give us
field.
a good sake tip. What's like
Oh
your
man, there's so many. Born
that one
Gold
we
that I
had in
like.
Vegas was amazing. That
You know,
that
there
one
was.
out of the iceberg. What the hell that what's it called?
Oh yeah, the snow aged.
Snow
The
aged.
snow
Yes.
aged. Yeah, really tasty. There's a lot of really good ones out there for sure.
Okay, so
I don't like the hot ones. The hot ones are usually cheap. I like the cold ones.
right.
Depends on what kind of fish you're eating, whatever else. But yeah, there's a
Well,
lot
that's
of
the
really good
thing.
ones.
I mean, if it's good sake, you could drink it cold. Otherwise, it tastes like,
Rubbing
battery
alcohol.
acid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
something.
like Decide 23, 45. There's a lot of really good ones. It's quite a door you open once you get into it.
I love it. Well, Mikey, where are we time wise? I don't have the clock in front of me. So I can't even.
We are an hour 25.
All right. Well, I guess we need to start wrapping up. There's so much more we never even got into. All the, I mean, yeah, we're gonna have to do this again. So, what are you working on now, Gary?
I'm currently at the moment just like I say we're doing Practical Magic 2, the Nicole Kidman
Right,
and Sandra Bullock remake of the film in the 90s, which became a bit of a cult classic, I think, via COVID. Uh,
right.
it's a lot smaller kind of film than what I've been doing of late. But it's quite nice to kind of get back to a bit of our roots. Three of us on the truck moves, we work from the truck, we get out the truck and the set's there. We've had a few locations. I've just been down a place called Salisbury, which is like a couple of hours out. I think
Mm,
that's one of the things that I mainly find mind blowing about the difference between us and you guys is if you're working 300 miles away, you call it you're working at home. Our studios, most of us guys live 20, 30 miles from the studio if we're studio based, and then we usually do a bit of studio work and then we go out to location, and obviously we're out then. But like even Tim, I just had the memory then of Tim talking about first time he shot in Daytona. I remember we shot a diner scene on Formula One, and he was like, dude, he was like, this is a 3-minute walk from my house. He was like, the closest I've worked to my house in the last 10 years is 2,500 miles away. And then when he took the project, obviously he knew about the racetrack, but he didn't know about the diner scene. And it's literally, and then as we were having lunch in the morning, he was like, look over there. He's like, that's my daughter's nursery. We were
nice.
on his doorstep.
Wow,
We're,
that
we're
doesn't
really
happen
lucky.
often.
Never, it will never happen again. It's like
Yeah, right.
when I lived in LA and lived in Culver City, it's like I spent those time with Parker at Sony doing House of Lies, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, here comes Warner Brothers, here comes Disney. It's like once you're on one side of the hill, you're working on the other.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Sony.
We're all a lot closer, you know. Like the studio that this is based out of is a Warner Brothers studio. My house is a 35-minute drive from the studio, so even when I've been out on location, this really does feel like I'm back home. I think that's the other thing that makes our job slightly easier to go from job to job is we're kind of at home,
Right.
a little bit more than you guys, and our hours seem to be a little bit less than when I've shot in America, and obviously listening to you guys, some of your hours can, you know, the frat a day we don't do
Yeah.
days. So you know that's a
It's
whole new learning curve for me as well, which I was learning when I was there.
yeah, they kind of shy away from a lot of that now. They're trying to keep everybody at 12s. So,
Yeah.
but hey, if there's too much work in the UK, man, you could send some of it back here. That'd be
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Yeah, I am really looking forward to a time when there's a film that has the crossover. I mean, the English US crossover doesn't happen that often,
No,
um,
Wow.
and usually if it does, it's never on the scale of Formula One. Like
right.
it would usually go to you guys to do that if they're going to go over and do that, and the same as if it comes over here. But it's such a niche film which you
Yeah.
obviously learn when you was with us that you couldn't stick a whole new crew to do that. It wouldn't
Sure.
just be
Although Ted Lasso's doing a couple episodes out here right now, from what I
Right.
understand. So there is some stuff. It's few and far
In
between,
St.
but
Louis or something like that,
yeah, in
right?
St. Louis. Yep.
Yeah.
yeah. But I am looking forward to the day that comes, knowing full well I already have my three go-tos, and if
Yeah,
my
well,
three go-tos. You
I'm
know,
ready.
it's the last two times I'd worked in the US before, it was a real quick in and out. I just met people. I hadn't even got really enough time to get to know them. Me and Tim, something we didn't talk about and we haven't got time for it now. I had something come up with my family that I had to
Right.
send. I'm sitting on the back of the boat with Tim. Tim's packing to go see his friends. I'm packing to go to Austin to go do a week's, and that's how well
Right.
I knew Tim at the end. Is I had a phone call which I did, I had to get home. Um, I put the phone down and I was like, I just looked at Tim. Tim was like, "Dude, you need to get home." I was like, "Yeah, I do, but I just don't know." And he was like, "It's cool. I'll go do it. You
Yep.
you go home, and I'll see you on the other side." And for you, Chris, obviously, you then spoke to Tim. I was already on a plane home, and Tim was like ringing you saying, Gary's not going to make the first shot and the first scene
That's
in
right.
Vegas. It's like, what? So,
Yeah. Pivot.
I
We all
feel like
pivot.
I've got to know you guys now that, if ever we get to film across the pond again and vice versa, I'd like to think if you ever come over to the UK,
Absolutely.
I'd be on your list to phone. So
Well,
I'm sure. I speak to Tim quite often. Chris, we've been in conversation via text and sending texts as the film comes out. I feel like I met not just work colleagues. I met some friends, which
yeah, absolutely.
is a really cool thing. And I've said to Tim before, I'm going to try and get my family out to LA, work it around when he's actually working in LA, and bring my family out to meet him and his
Oh,
family.
well,
We
please
took
let me know
me
when
to
that
his house,
happens.
and
Be a
we had
pleasure.
We'll have
we
you
had
out for
stone
dinner.
crab
It'll be
together.
great.
Yeah, we can get you
Yeah,
in the
we did
studio then
some.
too.
Yeah, very
Yeah, and I think
nice.
that's one of the things that again, we're running out of time, but that's one of the things that our industry is throws up little surprises every now and again. Is suddenly you get to meet people and it's like an experience that I mean, I'm sure you do in some jobs, but I don't know another job like what we do. I think
Yeah,
we
that's
have
for
the
sure.
coolest gig in film, and then film is one of the coolest gigs in work. I truly believe that. I think if you look
Absolutely.
at everyone on
Yeah.
set, a camera crew does cameras every day. It doesn't matter what film they do.
Right.
One day we're a cup of tea, the next minute we're putting a visor on someone doing 180
There
miles
you
an hour.
Yeah.
there you go. There you go.
Tim's talking about Bibles. He does
Yeah.
Bibles. He went from doing Bibles and 3D prints of Bibles to
Right.
we're so lucky. So
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
That's
I
part of
agree.
the it's part of the allure. Job changes every day.
Yep,
And
exactly.
if you
You don't
don't
get bored.
if you don't embrace it, it's not for you.
It's true.
It takes over your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
It's a lifestyle, not a job, is what I tell people.
100%. Hey, if you guys get a chance, I don't know if you've heard it, but Dak Shepard's podcast had Brad was on it, and they talking about F1. It's a good episode.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check that out. I find it
Yeah.
interesting. I know we're running out of time, but I find it interesting that, Apple produced this movie and now all of a sudden it's the largest movie that Brad has ever made. And Apple's discussing about buying rights to Formula One races. So I think the movie came out all right if Apple's going, wait a second, maybe we can
Yeah.
do something about this. So I know that ESPN's losing some of that coverage, and I think Apple wants
We
to
haven't
pick it up.
even spoke about my cameo in it. So
No, we
Wait a
didn't. That's
minute.
the
You
best.
were wait.
Oh,
Okay,
yes,
we
you're
got
right.
time. What was your cameo?
He's in it a few
I played
times.
Sonny's trainer.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
so I was really lucky.
Wait, did it make it on film? I got to look
Yeah,
closely.
Several
I've
times.
got some good. I'm on camera for a good 45 seconds, and he even turns around and shouts my name out and tells me to go do a little job for him. So
Nice.
uh,
All right. Little
it was
Easter egg.
so funny when we went to shoot the scene. It was originally scripted that it was Dodge, one of the characters, but that job is what I had been doing for 2 years with Brad. I
Right.
hold his crash helmet, I hold his bag, I hold his prop phone in his and in that scene I don't want to ruin the film, but he needs his phone and he needs his helmet bag. So
Right.
it's scripted that it's one of the other guys. We go to rehearse it, and we're rehearsing it because we're shooting it on the real race day of Abu Dhabi at the back of the track on the race day. So we go to rehearse it the day before. It's obviously scripted, it's someone else. And then as we're going to do it, Brad's like, "Oh yeah," so Joe's trying to talk it through, and he's like, "And then Dodge is going to get your phone out, and he's going to do this," and he's like, "What? Why is Dodge doing it?" He's like, "Well, that's how it's scripted. It's scripted as Dodge," and he's like, "But that would be Gaz. Gaz does that," and he was like, "Yeah, but this is like a moment, and he's like, "Yeah, but it should be Gaz. Gaz does that every day. Why is it not Gaz?" Joe looked at me and he was like, "Well, I have no problem with you doing it if you want to do it. Are you happy to do it?" And I was like, "I have my kit waiting
That's
for me." I was like, "I was born for this," so I went and grabbed my kit, and then obviously we filmed it. I took my wife
Brilliant.
to the premiere in Leicester Square, and literally the first person we bump into is Dodge. So I bumped into him. I was like, "Hey," I was like, "Abdul, this is my wife, Kelly," and he was like, "Ah, you're the wife of the guy who stole my scene." And he was like,
That's
"I'm not joking." Kelly started laughing. He's like, "I'm not joking." He's like, "When you watch this film and you see your husband on screen, know that should have been me, and he stole it from me."
That was Brad's decision. He had that choice.
exactly. I had nothing to
I
do
said,
with
I
it.
can't go against Bree. If Brad wants me, then that's what he's
That's
got to
it.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a good cameo, and it was a really nice way to sort of finish the project off.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, I thought it was great handing the envelope stack full of Benjamin Franklin's to pay off the bet. Like, here you go. And then you're walking away. I'm like, well done, guys.
Again, another thing that that was scripted. He has to give him $10,000 in an envelope. Well, as you know, you can't use fake notes, so
Nope.
I've got to have £10,000 in my back pocket because I'm on the track and I have nowhere else to put it, and I've
Right.
got another 12 jobs to do, and I'm in costume, so my costume hasn't got a zip up pocket, so I've either got to put $10,000 in a bag that has to sometimes be on me and sometimes not be on me, or it's
Wow.
got to be in my pocket. So for an hour and a half, obviously it's security and it's in a safe and it's locked up when we're not shooting, but for that moment, any other film that would be in the safe until the minute we shoot it. It comes
Yep.
out the safe, we do the scene, it goes back in the safe. In that guerrilla style shooting, that's not possible. It's
Yeah, I know. That's why studios don't want us to use real money.
and if it goes missing, I'm the guy that lost it.
Yeah.
But they let you keep it, right? When you're finished, they're like, well done.
Yeah.
Here's your
Right.
$10,000.
They were my incentives to do the
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So no, thank you ever
All
so
right,
much.
guys. Well, thanks so much for coming.
Really
Taking
appreciate
the
it.
time
We'll
on
have
this
to do it
day.
again. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk soon, guys.
Yeah. First of all, we have the MacGuffin Awards coming up on September 13th. Lots of great nominated stuff. So if you're part of the PMG and you're voting, make sure you vote. And if you want to come to the show at the Paramount Theater, buy your tickets. You can buy them on the Property Masters Guild website, propertymastersguild.org, and you'll be able to get your tickets there. They're going to fill up quick, so if you're hearing this, you should do it right now.
Yeah.
Buy your tickets. Get your tickets to the show. Last year was so awesome and it was so fun. It's the only night honoring prop masters for all their awesome work. So a lot of really good nominations this year. It's going to be a really fun time.
Our friend Robbie's for a nomination, isn't he?
Robbie does have a
Robbie,
nomination.
yes.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So many
Yeah,
friends
Robbie.
nominated. Really excited. So, thank you to everybody for listening to another awesome episode of Prop Talk, the only podcast of the official podcast of the Property Masters Guild, only podcast for prop masters. If this is your first time listening, make sure you like, subscribe, and do all the things on all the socials. We are on Instagram @_ the PMG, and just all the other socials. Just look up Property Masters Guild. If you have any questions for us here at Prop Talk, make sure you go to propertymastersguild.org or email info@propertymastersguild.org. And yeah, if you want to see anybody on the show or anything like that, let us know, and we will work to get them on. Yeah, that's it. And until next time.
All right. Peace, guys.